started.
Wonderful. I'll wait for the slides, but yes, I'm going to go ahead and talk. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Anna Fisher. I'm here in Nebraska, a nurse. I'm a boots on the ground nurse, very actively involved in resident council. Of course, I'm privileged to be invited and just have such a passion for this, especially all things QAPI. So I'm good, Dan, and thank you. If you could kindly help me advance the slides. So we're going to talk.
And everyone can see them okay?
Oh. Let me get that out. There we go.
We can see them?
Yes.
Yes, Dan.
Great. All right, go ahead.
All right.
Reported ahead on I-84 East.
Pardon? Was somebody asking a question? Dan, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you good.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're here to talk about QAPI, Quality Assurance Performance Improvement. And everything you see in here is going to be under the new QSO 2514-NH memo that was released on March 10th. And it goes into effect April 28th this month. And Dan, I believe you're going to put that link either in the chat or maybe towards the end. It'll also be included in the resources. We welcome your feedback here. So just a basic understanding on QAPI. Think of it as two parts, but together it's a seamless, methodical operation for your communities here. So the QA is really the quality assurance. Think of that as not only retrospective, but it's ongoing. It may be reports that you receive from state surveyors after they visit your communities, the 2567s. So it identifies areas of opportunity. Your PI then is your performance improvement, where you will focus on your high risk or your problem prone areas, and then you'll do a study. Combined, what it does is it monitors, assesses, observes all the nursing home care in your services. It's that ongoing continuous quality improvement. Next slide, please. This is an important slide here. Whoops. Oh, wait, Dan, I'm moving ahead of myself. This is the building blocks, everyone, to effective QAPI. Again, this is verbatim from CMS. And I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Alice Bonner on this call. There is a guide called QAPI at a Glance. We'll have that source for you as well. That contains everything you could possibly want for guiding your community's efforts through QAPI. It leads you through all of these building blocks here. It shows you how to conduct the PDSA, how to take systemic action, everything that you need. Plus, it has a self-assessment of QAPI. So you and your communities can take this self-assessment and you can identify where your areas of opportunity are that you can build further on. But I do want to take a minute to quickly go through these. That design and scope is taking consideration what are the services, the care that you provide. Please make sure you're including that clinical care, the quality of life, and resident choice. This is the resident's home first and foremost. That governance and leadership, I'm building block number 2 there. That is making sure you have the owner, the CEO, the exec team, whoever it is, the leadership that is actively involved in your QAPI efforts. 3, I really want to emphasize this one, feedback data systems and monitoring. You know, these communities are all doing this. We're great at collecting data. Take credit for what you're doing here. So for example, where can you get feedback? Even in the language there from CMS, they actually mention resident council. That is such a rich source of feedback. The residents, they add that value added perspective. Take advantage of that. Listen to what they're saying. You know, you're doing town hall meetings, safety meetings, suggestion, comment boxes. Take all of that data and then collect it all. It's up to you on how you want to collect it. I'm going to give you some ideas later on in this presentation. And then what's your method of monitoring? Are you doing quarterly audits? Are you doing monthly audits, etc.? A big part, though, I did want to emphasize on the feedback. New to the regulation is making sure you're addressing any concerns related to health equity. So you're probably wondering, what does that health equity mean? Is, for example, does the facility, your community, does it address the needs of individuals with disabilities, maybe limited English proficiency, a different language, different culture, ethnic backgrounds? You'll want to make sure you're soliciting and gathering that feedback as well. That's actually new added to the language in that QSO memo here. Moving on to number 4, a performance improvement project. This is not only best practice, but again, identifying areas of opportunity that are high risk, problem prone areas based on what your data has revealed. Under the regulation here, you must do 1 performance improvement project a year. That's not to say you can't have any more. We try to limit ours to 3. You want to be able to make sure you can manage it. And then on number 5, systematic analysis and systemic action. What does that mean? Systematic, think about your step-by-step processes, and then your systemic action is how do you put it all together for the greater good of the whole. Next slide, please. Thank you, Dan. Now to go over resident councils and really a quick summation. It's so important. Resident councils, it's a community gathering and it's an opportunity for residents to provide input on their own care. First and foremost, the nursing home is their home, and how privileged are we to participate and work in their home. So think about your own home, having people in your home. Wouldn't you want to have a voice? And this is what resident councils does, is offer the opportunity for residents for the amplifying their voice to be heard. So it's all about person-centered care. And I had already touched upon that second item there. They have unique perspectives. They generate new ideas. And again, I talk about innovation, creativity, not only best practice, but CMS will look at that as well. What are you doing to take your efforts to the next level to create that home-like environment for your precious residents here? And making sure that you're offering the support, the participation. You want them to be active participants in their care. Use the resident council as a source of input for QAPI, and we're going to get to that in a few slides here. And then when I show you this dashboard, it's really a container, if you will, that harnesses all the information. And when you see it, it will make greater sense. And Mairead already alluded to it at the beginning. It's almost like we need, resident council is its own department, its own entity. We need to make sure that we recognize that. Have a line entry for them in your QAPI dashboard. Next slide, please, Dan. So family group, the resident family group in response, this actually falls under federal 565, which is part of the resident rights regulatory group. So what this tag says, it outlines the rights of the residents that they can organize and participate in the resident group without the facility interfering. But the facility's response, they have to be supportive of whatever issues are raised. Now, I want to make a comment here that what if a resident raises a point of something or wants to do something and the facility is like, we can't do that. And I'm going to give the quick example of that we couldn't do it, but the residents wanted to go take a field trip to the U.S. Tennis Open. Well, we couldn't really take everyone to the U.S. Tennis Open, but we made arrangements to actually have it on TV, have almost a U.S. Tennis Open party. So again, what are you doing that shows evidence that is trying to meet the needs of the resident and their wishes and their choices here? So that last item there really encompasses it all. It says it is the responsibility of the facility to take reasonable steps to let families, residents know when the meetings take place and what are the outcomes and what's going on in your resident council activity. Next slide, please. So how do we take all that and put it into practice here? So when a surveyor enters our buildings, during the entrance conference, the surveyors are going to check to see if you have a resident or family council. They're just going to flat out ask you. If there is, then they're going to interview representatives from the group. They will definitely interview the resident council president and whoever else the surveyor wishes to choose. They're going to ask how those grievances and recommendations are considered. They're going to ask these individuals if they were addressed, acted upon, and how the facility provides the responses to the residents. They're going to look at your grievance log, your suggestions. They're going to look at how you provide potential resolutions to issues that may come up. So then a surveyor is going to look at all these issues and they're going to make that determination. Were they followed up on? So making sure you have not only a checklist or some type of systematic approach that when a resident does have a concern, I always look at it as an area of opportunity. What have you done to address it, to capture that? Next slide, please. As we move into putting it into practice now. So the QAPI dashboard, and I always say QAPI because it's two parts put together. Next slide, Dan. So the QAPI and feedback, you want to have the best mechanism. Everyone is different to capture feedback from your QAPI program. Some people use Excel spreadsheets, that's what we use, but come up with some type of mechanism. You may want to have a log, whatever works best for your community. You know it better than anyone. I put some examples here of obtaining resident and staff feedback that is critical to the entire QAPI process is soliciting feedback so you can have that ongoing, continuing care and improvement. Satisfaction surveys, questionnaires, routine meetings, and I brought that up earlier in the presentation here. You know you're doing daily huddles. You're doing all team meetings, care plan meetings, resident council, you see I highlighted that, town hall meetings, suggestion comment boxes. Again, you're doing all this. Take credit for what you're doing, but you need to make sure you have a systematic way of collecting all of this information then. And then, if possible, involve all these different individuals in problem solving various meetings. Again, not only is this clinical, and I'm a nurse, not only clinical, you want to think about involving other than your DON, your medical director, and your infection preventionist. Those are the three required individuals, and then you'll have three others, at least three others, that you make that determination. You may want to think about involving your CNAs, your culinary, your environmental services. Build your QAPI team accordingly. Next slide. So be proactive. When you are engaging with your residents, you're probably doing walkarounds, daily greetings every day. Capture that when you're talking with your residents and saying, how are you doing? How's it going? If they're giving you some type of feedback like, oh, I just had breakfast today and I noticed the food was a little bit colder than normal, didn't feel temped right. Take note of that. Capture that, incorporate that, and then you'll get all these responses back, and then you'll be able to identify a trend, a pattern. There's your systematic approach. But this is right here, a simple group of questions. When you're engaging with your residents, whoever it might be, ask some simple questions here. Take note of that and then incorporate that into your QAPI efforts. So again, these were just starter questions for you to begin the conversation as you're doing your daily walkarounds or rounds, daily huddles, whatever you do in your communities. Dan, next slide. Some feedback examples here. These are actual feedback examples from resident councils. Lengthy wait times for call lights. Staff telling residents, you're not my residents, you're someone else's side. Turning the call light off or telling residents, I'm too busy right now. Or here's another good one that I heard just the other day is, I'll be right back. And then the staff member doesn't return for maybe 30 minutes or so because they've encountered other issues along the way. So we want to be sensitive to when we say, I'll be back in a minute. Well, are you really going to be back in that minute? Because this is the resident's home and every precious second counts. Lack of sufficient staffing. For example, bathing. Oh, sorry, Mr. or Mrs. Resident, I couldn't get you your bath today because I was too busy doing another task. How about the dining room? Staff ignoring residents for help, or they're chatting amongst themselves instead of interacting and engaging with the residents. Keep in mind, this is their home, and we need to be including the residents in their own home. Food temps, again, that's a high surfacing issue here. Late food deliveries, poor food quality. And then what are some suggestions for activities and programming? If a resident says to you, there's never anything to do for activities, ask the resident, what would you recommend? What would you like to see? What would you like to do? Dan, next slide. So now that we have all this data, right? We've given you some suggestions, some prompting questions for conversation. Now here's a dashboard. This is just an example. I'm hoping you all can see a little bit of it, but you'll have your standard quality of care, quality of life metrics, meaning we're going to have data on falls, medication errors, wounds, things that are basic standard quality of life, quality of care issues. So on the next slide, Dan, if you could, what we're recommending, incorporate resident council on its own dashboard. This is what we have done. This again is just an example, everyone. Put on the left-hand side, what have been your problem-prone areas, your high-risk areas? So as a result of you asking questions, you attending resident council, you've gathered all this feedback now. You need to have a systematic way to showcase that data. This holds you accountable. So now you can go back and say to your residents, look what we've done. You can show the surveyor, look at what we've done in our QAPI efforts. We've incorporated a resident council QAPI dashboard. We have listened to their voice. We have identified the areas of opportunity, and here it is on the dashboard. We're going to set a benchmark for ourselves. So for example, maybe you have room temperature that I have there, that they're saying their room's too cold. Maybe you want to decrease the number of complaints of the room temperature. You want to decrease it by 10% every month. This captures your way of identifying if you're making progress or not. I'm going to pause there just for a minute. Really, does this all make sense? If I could see anyone say yes, no, but it helps you harness and collect all that information. I'm hoping this makes sense. And when we're done here shortly here, we'll open it up for discussion. And then from here, oh, Dan, next slide. I jumped ahead. Now that you've taken and you have that all outlined in your QAPI dashboard, you want to focus on your performance improvement project. Out of all of those issues or areas of opportunity, what has surfaced to the top as your high risk area? Because as right here, and this is verbatim from the regulation, everyone, you must have at least one improvement project annually. And maybe you do resident activities or recreation. It's up to you to determine that based on the risk or the most problematic area in your community here. You'll turn that into a performance improvement project. And what does that look like? Dan, next slide. We have, yes, another template for you. So for this performance improvement project, you're going to need to capture that information somehow. You'll want to make sure you have a team lead on that. And we have this resource here for you. You're going to develop your plan of action. What's your start date? When have you implemented? And I will tell you, surveyors will look at that. So here's your area of opportunity. Here's your goal. What's some of your strategy and tactics? Again, this is another systematic approach for you to capture your efforts on your performance improvement project. Next slide. This is actually recommended by CMS. This is called the PDSA, Plan, Do, Study Act. And I had given it a brief explanation on a previous webinar. A question arose, what's the difference between PDCA, Plan, Do, Check Act, versus PDSA, which you see here before you? The Plan, Do, Study Act is more for quicker solutions, smaller issues. So you'll get a quicker response resolution. Your PDCA is for your much larger systemic projects. So CMS recommends this PDSA as the methodology for your QAPI. So whatever action you're going to put in place, here's your plan, and then you're going to do it. You're going to carry out your plan. Then you're going to study it. Maybe you're going to study your new approach, your new intervention for 3 months, and then you're going to see if it worked. If it didn't work, and if it didn't make any improvement, you're going to start the entire cycle over again, your PDSA. Next slide. And then some resources as we wind down here on the QAPI. Once you get the process going, it is very simple. It really is if you follow the steps of it. And then the last slide here, Dan, if you could, next slide. I believe there's the QR code there for the resident council guide, as well as the guide to the GPPs, the goals, preferences, and priorities here. And then there's a link at the bottom of that slide with the new QSO memo that was released March 10th that outlines everything I had just said. And I will tell you, out of the 918 pages of this new QSO memo, QAPI starts on page 728. So just giving you a heads up on that. Fast forward to 728, and that'll showcase everything that I was talking with you here today. That was a lot to pack into a 15-minute conversation. So we wanted to leave time to address any questions or further conversation. Dan Marie, back to you and the entire group. Was this helpful? That was a lot of information.
Thank you so much, Anna. And just to note everybody, now that I'm not sharing the slides, I'll put the links in the chat. And then we're also going to have this up on the Resident Council Guide pilot site so that individuals can access it again in the future if needed, if wanted to share with other staff or residents. But yes, of course. Any thoughts, feelings? Did that get the thoughts going for anybody about maybe they are doing more QAPI than they thought they were, or some ways that you could incorporate resident council into QAPI more than you currently are? Open the floor.
Dan, could I make a comment? Oh, go ahead. I was going to talk about HIPAA. I'll table it.
Sounds good. And yes, I of course, our pleasure. I see a couple thank yous in the chat. Yeah, and if you wanted to touch, I did get one question that had come in, and if you did want to touch on it while we have a moment, is how can we ensure that we're protecting client or resident information from a HIPAA perspective, while also incorporating them and allowing the residents to really have a voice at the table when it comes to the QAPI process?
Yes. And Dan, I also shared a CMS resource on how to incorporate residents and families into your quality improvement efforts. I know that was, I believe, a one-page fact sheet, but in the QAPI at a glance guide that Dr. Bonner developed here, in there, it actually outlines that you want to incorporate the residents into your QAPI efforts. Now, if you're concerned about confidentiality, and we need to be concerned about that, HIPAA, we talk about some very clinical issues in QAPI. If there's generic issues like food temps, things like that, you may want to start at your QAPI meetings with the beginning with your residents at the meeting. That's what we would do. So in other words, you wouldn't want them to sit through everything and then address your residents. Have the residents participate at the beginning. Let them have an active voice of whatever it might be. So I know, Dan, did that person have an example of, I know they said the leadership was concerned about the HIPAA if residents participated in QAPI. Is that how I understand it?
Yep, and again, it was just a quick question. They weren't able to be here today, so they wanted to make sure the question. I don't have any specifics about what aspect of resident protected information was concerning to be shared, or the way that it would be shared. But I did want to make sure that we open that to the floor so that individuals have an opportunity to kind of hear about ways that we can continue to protect. Alice.
And so,
sorry, Anna, I was just going to add to everything that you and Dan just said. Another approach is, as part of the QAPI policies at any nursing home, you could have a one-page or just even a half-page that addresses HIPAA as part of those policies so that you can reinforce each time, because again, there could be new residents who come in or new staff members who come in. And so, it's a very fundamental and important regulation. So again, to Anna's point and Dan's point, remind people at the beginning of each QAPI meeting, for example, and the idea of having the residents in the beginning and just reminding everybody not to use individual names or identify specific individuals, I think is really helpful.
And his HIPAA is all about the need to know, not nice to know information. It's the need to know. So in our QAPI, we'll have the residents followed by maybe culinary and environmental services. And then after they're done with their report out, then they leave the meeting so we can respect and honor that HIPAA. So I'm hoping that helps or puts that, your mind at ease with the participation.
No, that's wonderful and very helpful. Thank you. And I'm just putting here in the chat as well. I've put in the QSO we're talking about, the CMS resources, as well as copies of the slides. And I'll note that all of these resources, as well as the video recording of your presentation, will all be available on the RC Pilot site that I'm linking right here as well, so individuals can access it at a later point.
And that's great. Thank you. I'm going to go back to Mairead's point at the very beginning. Quality improvement starts with all, and this is the resident's home. So they should be having a say in the quality improvement efforts. And having its own dashboard, or however you want to do it, the metric is really a way of you being able to show how you're integrating resident council feedback in your quality improvement efforts.
Great. And so with that said, anyone, any questions, thoughts? I want to make sure we all have the opportunity if there's any things that are working or not working. I know we talked about it earlier, but if individuals had joined during the presentation and want to touch on some of the things that they're finding helpful when using the guide, or ways that their resident council is really showing growth and progress, feel free to share. And with nothing coming in the chat. Oh,
Hey, Dan.
Yes.
Can you-
Hello, is this
can you-
Jeanette?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello, Jeanette.
One good thing that has happened so far since we started the pilot in January is that our attendance has increased. We went from having like 10, maybe 11 people, and our last month's meeting, we had 22 people in our meeting. So I'm very excited about that. We've also been talking with our administrator, who I think might even be on this, about how we can participate in the QAPI and working that out, because we've never been included in that before. We're coming up with some new strategies of how to streamline our resident council minutes. And not only do we post them in our resident council board in the hallway, but we also put them up on the flat screen for our meetings. And our next meeting, we're hoping to actually pass out some paper copies as well from the last month's minutes for those people that can't see or hear very well, but they can still participate in the meeting. So the guidebook has given us some good directions of how to kind of evolve more. Rich Mateer and I have been doing this for more than a decade together. So it's been exciting to see some of the improvements just even over the last couple months. And we're very excited that we're able to participate in this pilot program.
That's beautiful. And Jeanette, you reinforce the importance of celebrating the wins.
Yes.
Yes.
You have to. You have to, because sometimes some days all you have are losses. And if you don't celebrate the wins when you do, then you can just really become depressed, and your community becomes depressed and they don't want to participate. And so you've got to keep the glass half full, not half empty. So.
Absolutely. And thanks for sharing. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are even a robust resident council, always still has room to grow in ways
Yes.
that you foresee or don't foresee. And so that's
Right.
great to hear. And then I see in the chat here a question about, does any other facilities currently include the residents in QAPI? And I don't want to speak for all homes, but I do know that several iCare homes mentioned that they are including residents in QAPI. And if any of those homes want to reinforce, how they're doing that, again, feel free to share. What I found is that several facilities have noted that they thought they were doing a stronger job in incorporating residents in the QAPI than they actually were. And then I have other facilities that realized that they were doing more regarding resident councils and QAPI involvement after kind of considering some of the ways that it's done. And so that's why I thought it was a good idea to kind of have everyone have the opportunity to talk about that here as well.
Dan, I also want to encourage, we do have a lot of different nursing home chains on here and groups. And since this is going to be on the site for the Moving Forward Coalition Guide, you talked about needing education for your groups, maybe bringing this back to your corporate office, bringing it back to share with sister facilities, things like that, where you can hopefully benefit from that as well.
And that's a good point. The ongoing education is important. This isn't a one and done. This is ongoing. And we're here to support. I love hearing these stories.
I know. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining today. We had great participation.
Okay.
And I look
What-
forward to the continued conversations.
One other thing, can I add? One of the other things that Rich and I do is that we send a copy to all our department heads, copies of our minutes to all the department heads, so that before they even attend a QAPI meeting or something like that, they know some of the issues that have been brought up with the residents. So that is something else that we do.
Great. And, you know,
Excellent.
being mindful of the time, I see that we're coming up to the top of the hour here. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us today, for being part of this conversation, for being part of this pilot. You know, continuing to submit those monthly minute forms after each council ongoing. Again, I'm excited because I see that we're kind of falling into a cadence, and we're really having the opportunity here to continue to grow and see where we go from here. So again, if there's ever any questions or concerns, you can reach out to the Moving Forward team, whether it be your coach, your ombudsman, the general Moving Forward staff, or always we have an invite for the monthly office hours for facility participants. And so resident councils, members, corporate staff, rec directors, everyone's invited. So if there's particular questions that come up month to month, we're continuing to share best practices monthly on those optional call-ins as well. Great. And so again, thank you everyone for joining today. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan and
Thank
Miranda
you.
and Anna.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.